Hello everyone, my name is Ellie Thompson, and this is my tutorial for creating a shape in CSS. So the shape that I chose is a Pokeball from Pokemon, and I accomplished this by using 4 different divs in purely CSS. So I started first by creating a div called Pokeball, or it has a class called Pokeball, and I started by just creating a simple square. So here we have our width set at 400 pixels and height matching that. And then I set the background to black. The next step that I did was I set the margin to 0 auto, which centers the square on the page, so that's setting the top and bottom margin to 0. And then the left and right margin is set automatically, so as the screen changes in width, it'll automatically center it for us. And then we have our background set at black. And then we have our border radius set to 50%, which will turn our square into a circle. So the next step that I did is I decided to use 3 different divs. So we have one with the class of top, one with the class of middle, and one with the class of bottom. So basically a Pokeball is split between 2 sections, and then there's a circle in the middle. So I use the top for the top part of the Pokeball, bottom for the bottom part, and then middle will be a little circle in the center of our Pokeball. So starting with the top, I created a rectangle. So I set it to 380 pixels. So it's 10 pixels. There'll be like a 10 pixel space on either side of our Pokeball, since it'll have it's 20 pixels less wide. 20 pixels smaller than the width of our main container, which is that black Pokeball. And then I set the height to 180 pixels, which is 20 pixels shy of half of the Pokeball. So if we have a 400 pixel by 400 pixel square, it's chopped in half to 200 pixels, and then I left a little space for margin, so it'll look cool. You'll see. So after. And then I also changed the background to red for the top of the Pokeball. Our next step is to turn this Pokeball from a rectangle into a half circle. So I did this using the border radius property, specifically the border top left and border top right. So what that did was it cut off the sides of our rectangle. So the top left radius is set here, and then the top right here. So I set that to 350 pixels, which is equivalent to the width of our Pokeball minus some space for the padding and stuff. I also included a border of 10 pixels at the bottom, so that'll help our Pokeball look more normal, since it is split between the top and bottom. Now we can see that our Pokeball is a little bit off-center. So what I did was I added in positioning, and I positioned it relative to the container that it's inside of. So that would be the Pokeball div. So it's relative to that. It's going to be placed 10 pixels from the top and 10 pixels from the left. So that gives us that little extra space on the side here. The next step was to get our bottom part of our Pokeball down. So it's the same principle. We're going to use our height and width is the same as the first. And then our border radius, we're going to be, instead of doing the top left and right, we're going to this time do the bottom left and right. And then we're going to add a small border to the top to give us that extra space. This one also has, I also set the bottom to white. I did it blue initially so you could see it. And then we're also going to position that relative to our containing div. So now we got a pretty complete Pokeball. All that's left is the center part. So for the middle, I created a square. So let me show you first what it's going to. Well, at first it was a square like that, or I guess a rectangle. That's weird. I don't know. Oh, you know what it is? It is a square, but it's hiding behind our bottom part. So if I actually go like this, you can see that our middle section, it is a square, but it's hiding behind the bottom div because of its positioning, since I set it to absolute. So let's uncomment this. There you go. So because it was hiding behind that bottom div, what I did was I set the Z index to 10,000, so that'll push it well beyond the bottom layer. So the Z index 1 is the default. It's kind of like when you're using like a Word document and you're sticking like layers of things, and you can like send it to the back or bring it to the front. It's the same thing with Z index. So the higher the Z index is, the higher it will rank towards the front of your, it's kind of like a stack of papers, so it would move it to the very front of the stack. So that was our Z index property, and then I also created the border radius here, set to 50%, so that gives us our circle. And then I also added a little bit of, I added a border, so it should be black, but I just set it to blue so you can see. But yeah, so the only difference with this one is that I set the position to absolute. If we did this as relative, it would move everything down, right? Because it's trying to display things kind of like in the block situation. So if we do it absolute, it will absolutely position it in the center of our Pokeball div. And I kind of played around with the values, but basically, since the width of our rectangles is 380 pixels, I just divided that. Oh no, I lied. I didn't divide it in half. I just messed around with it. Sorry, I made this on like Tuesday, so I'm trying to remember. But I thought it came out pretty good. It looks like a Pokeball. It's completely in CSS, which is really cool. And also for the border radius, it is in our reading recommended to use prefixes, so like WebKit, Moz, whatever, to help for browser support. But when I looked it up on Can I Use, it says that for border radius, it's supported by all browsers except for Opera, or Opera Mini. So I don't think you need the prefixes, but if you do feel like you want to do it just in case, you can drop that in for the border radiuses. But other than that, it was pretty simple actually, and it came out pretty good. I like it. So I hope you figured out how to create a Pokeball, and I hope this was helpful for you. And thanks for watching my walkthrough.